Hello, Fiendlings, how the hell are ya? I received the manuscript layout for my newest novel and we're just waiting on cover art. That's good news for me and good news for you too. As soon as I finish recording Oceania, I can begin narrating the new book for you. I'm still in the recording booth in between massive distractions such as doctor's appointments, appointments for my parents, and the general things life throws at you. I'm not getting as much done as I'd hoped, but I'll be picking up the pace later this week. Well, that's all for now. Be safe, have a great couple of days, and we'll talk again Friday. Here's episode 13 of Neptune Scars. Chapter 27. The probe reached a distance of 20 kilometers from its target, and Black checked her preparations for the 1,000th time. She was pointed away from the area, and the gravitic engines were idling and ready for a burst that would be highly unpleasant for the captain, but would ensure their safety. Once she got him into stasis, she could open up the throttle again and make it back to Neptune long before the Exos had a chance to swarm her. She had full stacks of ammunition in her cannons, missiles in her bays, and there wasn't much more she could do now than wait. Oaks may be bored and anxious, but it was nothing compared to what she was going through. Still, she felt for him. Mortality meant so much more to humans than it did her. After all, she'd never technically been alive, and until a few months ago, barely sentient. Now that she had a sense of mortality, she found it didn't change much at all. In essence, all it confirmed was what she already knew. One day, she would be switched off and never come back on, unless it was as part of something different, her quantum particles of consciousness somehow released back into the universe to become something else entirely. Humans called the concept the void, with the idea that creation is an ongoing process, that every part of their being enters a nothing to become something else. Considering humans were mostly made of stardust, it was a concept Black could get behind. It beat being constantly afraid to move outside her bay for fear of being destroyed by an angry deity. How could sentients think like that and function without experiencing severe psychosis? Black's sensors tripped as a wave of EMR erupted from the spot where Pluto's center used to be. The wave receded, but the sensors tripped again, much higher this time. By the time the wave began fading, another arrived. "Captain," Black said, and forwarded her readings to his HUD. "Prepare for combat." Do you know something I don't?" "Only that the commander mentioned he'd seen a shimmer before something came through from the other side. I believe EMR counts." "Shit," Oaks grumbled. "Where do you want me? Fire control or—" "You are well protected where you are," she said. "I have depressurized the entire ship and deactivated all grav plates." "Good to hear," he said. The probe sensed the EMR and increased its speed. It had found a target. Black continued receiving telemetry from it, but the data had started to break up, presumably from interference. Whatever was happening was scrambling the signals. "So much for automatons," she thought. "What about QE?" She'd lost block comms with Dunn shortly after leaving Neptune space. They had always assumed there was a limit to the range, and now they knew. She wondered if the commander was concerned about it. She hadn't been, but right now QE comms would be a good thing to have. A sliver of silver zigzagged across space like a lightning bolt. The probe's sensors immediately determined the phenomenon to be less than half a kilometer in length and a tenth as high. Depth? Unknown. Dunn had shown her the image he'd seen in Xi's sim. When she compared it to what she was seeing, she knew what was about to happen next. Thousands of meters away, the GravLab's toy adjusted its aim and activated. Black couldn't see the beam of gravitons. It was no more than a few angstroms in width, but she immediately sensed the effects. The EMR waves coming through the portal receded into nothing for a moment as the universe seemed to hold its breath. The shimmering silvery lines froze and became blinding white before something materialized through the rip in space. A massive thing glided upward in front of the beam, the shadows hiding its form, but her radar picked up something constantly changing and morphing. It fell apart as though sliced through by the graviton beam, a flare of silver rising into space. A heartbeat later, a swarm of pine cones came through the rip, some unlucky enough to clip the beam or run through it laterally. More silver light, more fireworks. The generator's battery drained dry, and Black knew it would take 45 seconds to charge up for another burst. Black was too far away to do anything other than watch more and more creatures come through the gap. Lightning arced across the tear, making it look like a sinister sideways mouth, and the rift seemed to widen and lengthen at the same time. Black's radar filled with signatures. Hundreds. Thousands. "Captain, hold on," Black said, and hit the throttle. Her gravitic engines activated, and she quickly accelerated to 7 Gs. Once she felt she had enough of a head start, she cut the engines. Oakes was still attached to the bulkheads, and while his vitals had jumped during the grav burn, they were all well within parameters. "Are you okay, Captain?" "I'm good, Black. What the void did I just see?" "The extinction event," Xi had said in Dunn's memory shortly before the Battle of the Scar. "It would seem we got here just in time for an offensive," she said. "Send a message to Trident, now." "I have, Captain. However, the interference in the area is increasing by the second. It's similar to the phenomenon we experienced at the Battle of the Scar." "Damn it," he said. "How many are there?" "Too many for me to keep track of. Their albedo is practically non-existent, and they are clustering." Oakes was quiet for a moment. The graviton generator no longer broadcast any signal. Black assumed it had been destroyed when the rest of the creatures came through. Without its beam, it had been powerless to wound them, much less repel their assault. But the graviton beam had had a profound effect even on the large creatures, not to mention the rift seemed to lose power for an instant, or it... "Captain, I have a plan, but I don't think you'll like it." "Oh, you certainly know how to start a conversation. Let's hear it." She projected the plan to his HUD, including 3D animations. "I will attract their attention using tritium flechette flak and follow it up with at least one missile. Depending on how they respond," she said, "we'll lead them away from the rift." "Why?" "We can flip directions and fire the graviton beam directly at it." He was silent for a moment, his fingers flexing but not clenching. Black loved watching humans think, their body language broadcasting the upper layer of their emotions like a bullhorn. "How close do we have to get to the target?" he asked, voice low and steady. 2 kilometers, she said. "Any further than that, and I've no idea how effective it will be." "We have more than enough armaments to keep them occupied," he said. "We have gravitic mines we can drop too." Black let him think, running more simulations based on the mines, when to drop them and how best to booby-trap their approach or retreat. There was also a possibility. "On our approach," he said, "let's light up the rift and give them a reason not to come through." Black felt a rush of emotion, although she didn't quite understand it at first. She quickly realized it was the same feeling she'd had when it was just her and Dunn, the last two, the only two, and that she had to save him no matter the cost. If she could save him, she could save her crew. She could help save humanity. "Captain," she said, "please move from the current bulkhead to the midship seam between personnel and cargo." "Why?" he asked as he demagged and began walking. "The hull is thickest in this area," she said. "I'll transfer missile control and mind control to your HUD. If you don't mind, I'll keep the autocannons." He laughed. "You're far better at the cannons than I am, Black." "Agreed," she said. "Might I suggest you also prepare to head to your SV Null should something happen? It will be safer than the escape pods and will give you a fighting chance to clear the area and send a distress call." Oakes flipped up his visor and stared at the nearest camera as he maglocked himself to the seam. "Black, you've already got us up in flames before we fired a shot." A magnetic piston hit a missile and pushed it out of the bay. Once it reached a distance of 50 meters, its attitude thrusters flipped it in the right direction and the rocket came to life. The missile streaked in the direction of the silvery mouth. "See?" Oakes said. "Now we've at least fired a shot." If Black could grin, she would have. Instead, she activated the attitude thrusters to point her along the plotted direction and accelerated at a meager 4 Gs. Oakes could handle that without issue and for quite some time. Soon, she'd increased to 13 Gs, which he couldn't handle nearly as long without a gravity bubble. The warhead detonated in a spherical shimmer of ethereal waves, and Black's radar signals became a swirl of EMR interference. A moment later, the radar signatures reformed, but she hardly needed them. 500 kilometers away and closing, 4 newly formed KBOs were coming toward her. Behind them, things much larger, whose physical forms blotted out the stars themselves. She calculated their speeds and felt a surge of panic. "Captain, these are much faster than the previous creatures." "How much faster?" he asked. "Fast enough to make this uncomfortable for you. Do you wish to enter stasis?" Another missile left the bay and headed for the rift itself. Oak seemed to be enjoying himself, his eyes already searching for the next point of interest he felt needed a missile. "Having too much fun, Black. While we're here," he said and fired another, this one headed directly at the massive, amorphous, leviathanic shadows. "Might as well get some payback." I believe your species is far too much in love with the idea of last stands, Black said. Oakes chuckled. He switched from the missile battery to the mine launcher. Maybe, but the surest ship beats piloting a ship that can pilot herself. Point taken, Black said. I'm going to increase power to 7 Gs once they get within range. Sounds good to me, Black. Just try and make it smooth. Your wish is my command. I think that's the other way around, Oakes said dryly. Not at all, Black said. I want to lead them 10,000 kilometers from the target. Once that occurs, we will flip and approach at a high speed. How many Gs and for how long? 13 Gs for a minute and a half. I can do that, Oakes said. Top end, but the suit's rated for it. I go any faster than that, and you'll either be in stasis or a gravity bubble. Shit, can they go that fast? No, Black said, but we need plenty of time to do what we need to do without a horde of them standing between us and the rift. Got it, Oakes said. Got more missiles ready, but we're out of range to see what's going on. Correct. I can't drop a probe. No way to get its telemetry. The interference continues to increase. Oakes looked up at her camera. Any chance of it affecting you? Nothing so far, she said, but I don't recommend ditching in a suit. Your genetics might be permanently damaged. Lovely, Oakes said. Got any other good news for me? Yes, Black said. They appear to be focusing on trailing us rather than heading back to the rip. 20,000 kilometers away from Black and Oakes, Gunny's probe lost Black's energy signal and picked up a strange form of EMR, one it recognized. The probe's gravitic engines came to life and it blasted back toward Neptune at high speed. Once it no longer detected the EMR, it decelerated while it sent 2 messages, one via radio, the other via QE. Chapter 28. Commander Dunn decided the universe must be ending. Kalimura had sent him an update, CCing Talby, that she and the XO had recruited 3 additional resources that would require little training and probably less supervision. It left him feeling both overjoyed and annoyed. At this point, it seemed as though they were assembling quite the array of talented non-coms with no grunts to lead and only a few pilots. The good news was that once they got fresh meat, they'd actually have the personnel to train them. That, however, was weeks away, maybe months. Might as well be eons away when the Scar was writhing like a live wire and every hackle on his body stood straight on end. It didn't help the diminishing morale and the overwhelming sense of hopelessness creeping over the crew. How much longer could even he keep the faith? His wristband vibrated and he glanced at it while wiping at his tired eyes. Once he saw the caller, he immediately wanted to hang up. Instead, after heaving a long sigh, he tapped accept. Commander, what the void is going on? Reed asked. What is it now? Dunn asked, already bored with the conversation. The printer queue. All of our requests have been pushed. The shipyards is ignoring our priorities. Dunn frowned before bringing up the shipyard's interface. Sure enough, the Grav Lab's requests were now at the bottom of the queue. 5 items were in front of them, each with an estimated time of completion of the next hour or 2. I don't know anything about this, Dunn said, and it's beyond my control in any case. What does Portunus say? Reed sounded more frustrated than ever. Portunus said he can't do anything about it either. Who the void is in control here? Dunn opened his mouth to reply, his anger already filling his brain with what to shout in response. Instead, he realized the question wasn't who, the question was why. Why had the shipyards decided to override the queue? What were they printing? I'll get back to you, Dunn said and terminated the connection. Portunus? Yes, Commander. What's in the queue? He asked. Several designs we're unfamiliar with. We do not have access to the shipyard blueprints at this time, and Gunny Cartwright hasn't tried to communicate with us. Strange, Dunn thought. Gunny had never overridden a queue without an express request, so what was he printing and for whom? Do we know how many he's printing? Dozens, if not hundreds, from the number of automatons moving in the area. A cam feed appeared on his holo display. The shipyard's printers looked as though they had been swarmed by gnats. What are you doing? He wondered aloud. We believe Gunny Cartwright has received information we are not privy to. He may be preparing the shipyards for something. Or us, Dunn said quietly. Trident was relatively naked right now. Apart from the trio's defenses, his tiny sortie of SV Null, and enough Marines to fill out maybe 2 skiffs, the station had nothing. Its most powerful weapon was out at Pluto, and a cam feed appeared on his holo display. At first, Dunn wasn't sure what he was looking at. It just seemed to be space littered with stars. A moment later, many of those stars disappeared, only to reappear in chaotic repetitions. A coordinate appeared on the screen. "Where is that?" he asked Fortunas. "And where is the transmission coming from?" "The transmission was beamed nearly 40 minutes ago via normal radio," Fortunas said. "The message was signed using a collective key." "What about the coordinates?" "It's where Pluto used to be," Fortunas said. The cam feed signal remained constant, meaning whatever was sending had kept sending. They might be more than 40 minutes behind the action, but what he was seeing had more or less just happened. A telltale whitish blue of gravitic engines appeared at the top left corner of the feed. The bright orb, who knew how many kilometers away, changed trajectory and disappeared. Dunn knew why, too. It was heading in the same direction the camera faced. After that, it was as if the stars had become arrhythmic warning lights, flashing without reason as objects passed in front of them. "There must be thousands of them," he said. "Agreed," Fortunas said. Black and Oaks were nearly 20 hours away if Dunn somehow hitched a ride on a ship just like her. The only one capable of traveling that distance in a timely manner was the LeBlanc, which had sat vacant and untested for half a dozen weeks. No human had ever boarded her. "I need a moment, Fortunas." "Of course, Commander." The presence disappeared from the ready room. Dunn tented his hands on the table and leaned forward. This was something he hadn't ever wanted to do. It was an admission that he was merely a vassal and that humanity itself couldn't survive without their masters. He had waited and waited, done his best to carry on without asking, without begging, for help. What would be the point, though? Regardless of his or humanity's pride, the enemy had been unleashed, and without the collective's help, humanity would become extinct. Master or slave, in the end, non-existence was the same. They needed the LeBlanc, but not to save Black and Oaks. Even that ship would arrive far too late to help them. No, he needed that ship because it was the only true battle weapon he had apart from the station's defenses. The only good news is that the creatures wouldn't arrive in Trident space for a week or more, unless they managed to travel faster than the brood from Mira had. If that was the case, all bets were off. A week and a half, if they were lucky, and the creatures would arrive here. Gunny could print fast, but they were already running low on resources after Von On's rush job. He'd need to ask for additional shipments. So much to ask for when each request would be nothing short of begging. Hating himself, he closed his eyes and imagined Xi. "Let's talk." The sense of vertigo that always hit him when he entered Xi's virtual space upset his vision, and his stomach flipped and flopped. The sensation disappeared, and he stared over a metal table at Xi. The Avatar sat in a hammock, a jar of nasty-looking things propped up on his bare, rotund belly. He sang along to a song Dunn didn't know, and in a language he'd never heard. Xi slowly turned his head and smiled at Dunn. The discordant off-key tones stopped, and Xi made a show of clearing his throat. "Commander, this is a surprise." "Somehow I doubt that," Dunn said. He finally noticed the hammock, made of a material that looked organic rather than synthetic, was tied to nothing on either side. It appeared as though it were held up by the air itself. The table Dunn sat in front of was all too familiar, although now it appeared to have scars in it. Several doodles made by an inkless pen or perhaps a knife of some kind. One showed a stick figure in front of an irregular circle. He wasn't sure, but Dunn thought the circle wasn't really supposed to be a circle. "You need a new table," Dunn said, looking up. Xi appeared at its head, his considerable bulk pressed into the chair, but the hammock remained behind him, gently swinging as if he'd just departed. "I like this one," Xi said and ran his hand across the imaginary surface, the sound a harsh whisper bordering on a squeal. "Has character and history. I imagine it'll just get more distressed over time." "What's going on at Pluto?" Dunn asked. "So much for small talk," Xi sighed heavily. "Okay, so you've seen what I've seen." "Doubt that." Xi clicked his fingers on the table. "May I continue?" "Yes." "Good," Xi said. "Do you think it normal that your probe died at about the same distance Black was from where Pluto used to be?" "No," Dunn said. "I don't." "Then you probably don't think it's a coincidence that the Scar decided to wake up and perform." "No, I do not." "Well, you know as much as I do." No, I don't, Dunn said again. Stop playing games. I don't have time for this. Actually, you do, she said, especially since we're in block time, so calm down. I am calm, just pissed off. Aren't you always? She said. Why do you think the collective didn't give you a heads up? About Pluto? Because they like using us as guinea pigs? How cynical. Remember near the end of the battle? How could I not? How indeed, she agreed. There was significant instability. For days afterwards, you had micropools of gravity swirling about. Those were side effects of the tear and rip that was forming, as well as from the weapons. Kind of figured, Dunn said. What's your point? That the collective's technology is not invincible. That's why Von On had to go and take humans with it. That's why Black and Oaks can't communicate with you. It's also why the collective thought they knew what was going on, but didn't. Dunn shook his head. I doubt that, too. Believe or don't, it doesn't matter. The point is there's evidence of the problems all around you. You're just now catching on to what the collective and I have known since before the battle and what Gunny Cartwright himself witnessed. What's that? She grinned, but his eyes were soft and nearly glistening. Instability is becoming the rule, not the exception. Things are thin and getting thinner. The Avatar looked to the right, and the Neptune Scar appeared, the strange colors still flowing across its shape like liquid. And sooner or later, that thing is going to split open like a rotted melon, only instead of fruit flies, you'll get pine cones and starfish and leviathans, oh my. Are you ever going to take anything seriously? Probably not, Xi said. Except for cases like this, Commander. I take this very seriously, as should you. Xi's ears twitched and he grinned. Your XO is calling, he said softly, and snapped his fingers. Vertigo filled Dunn's skull again, the world spinning away before spinning back in and returning him to his ready room. He held his head in his hands, waiting for the nausea to pass, and ignoring his wristband thumping against his skin. After he composed himself, he glanced at the name and tapped it. Yes, Major. Thought you might like to know that 2 barges are coming from Uranus. Should be here in a few shifts. Manifests? Provisions and materials. Lots and lots of materials. Excellent. Anything else? No, sir, Talby said. Out. Dunn tapped his wrist and the connection ended. He leaned back in his chair and brought up the manifests for the incoming barges and blinked when he saw the numbers. The shipyards now had enough material to print another LeBlanc, unless the collective were planning on constructing something else. Finally, movement.